The clock is ticking and the world is changing in ways we never imagined. Imagine a time when chaos reigns and the signs are all around us. Rising tensions, natural disasters, and a palpable sense of unease. You may have felt it too, that nagging thought in the back of your mind. What's happening to our world? Now picture this. The last 7 years. A countdown that feels eerily familiar, echoing ancient prophecies that have warned us of these very days. It's a time when shadows grow long and the stage is set for a drama unlike any other. What if everything we've been taught is unfolding right before our eyes? Can you hear the whispers of history repeating itself? As we dive deeper into this turbulent narrative, consider the implications. What does it mean for you, for your loved ones, and for humanity as a whole? Stay with me as we unravel the layers of this unfolding story, exploring the signs and the incredible truths that lie beneath the surface. Trust me, you won't want to miss a moment of what's to come. The journey has just begun and the revelations will leave you questioning everything. Ready? Let's go. Climate change and its impacts. You know, it's hard to ignore the signs of climate change these days. Just stepping outside, you can feel the heat more intensely than ever. It's like nature is cranking up the thermostat, and we're all sweating it out. The summers are longer, winters are milder, and those unpredictable rainstorms have become the norm rather than the exception. It's not just a fleeting trend, it's a wake-up call that we can't afford to snooze on. The consequences of these rising temperatures ripple across the globe, impacting everything from agriculture to sea levels. I remember reading about how the agricultural sector is being hit hard. Crops that used to thrive in certain climates are now struggling to survive. Farmers are facing the wrath of droughts and floods, and it's heartbreaking to see them lose their livelihoods. It's not just about food production, it's about the people who rely on it. The supply chain is becoming increasingly fragile, and the cost of living is rising as a result. You can almost hear the anxiety in conversations when folks talk about their grocery bills these days. And let's not even start on the extreme weather events. Hurricanes, wildfires, and heat waves have become more frequent and intense, leaving destruction in their wake. I can't help but think about the lives that are uprooted, the communities that are shattered, and the ecosystems that are irreparably damaged. These aren't just numbers in a report, they're stories of real people facing real challenges. It feels overwhelming at times, and it makes you wonder what the future holds for the generations to come. The global consequences are staggering too. Climate change doesn't recognize borders. It's a shared problem that affects everyone, regardless of where you live. Developing nations are often hit the hardest, struggling to adapt while dealing with the repercussions of industrialized countries' actions. It's a stark reminder of our interconnectedness and the responsibility we have to each other. If we don't take action, we risk leaving a legacy of devastation that will haunt us for decades. So, here we are, grappling with the reality of climate change. It's a daunting challenge, but I believe that awareness is the first step toward change. Conversations about renewable energy, sustainability, and conservation are gaining traction. It's encouraging to see individuals and communities coming together to fight for a better future. We might be facing a crisis, but there's also a glimmer of hope in the collective efforts to turn the tide. Growth of socio-economic inequality. Have you noticed how the gap between the rich and the poor seems to be widening every year? It's as if we're living in two different worlds. On one side, you have the wealthy elite, enjoying luxuries that some of us can only dream about. On the other side, there are people struggling to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck. It's a stark contrast that's hard to ignore, and it's affecting our society in profound ways. I often think about how this growing inequality impacts our communities. While some people are investing in extravagant lifestyles, others are facing food insecurity and homelessness. It's heartbreaking to see families working multiple jobs just to survive. The sense of stability and opportunity seems to be slipping away for so many, and it's creating a sense of hopelessness that's hard to shake off. I can't help but wonder if we're heading toward a society where only a privileged few will thrive. Education, or the lack thereof, plays a significant role in this inequality. Those with access to quality education have a better chance of breaking the cycle. But what about those who don't? It feels like a cruel twist of fate that determines so much based on where you were born. We talk about equal opportunities, but the reality is that systemic barriers often prevent many from achieving their potential. It's frustrating to see talent and ambition stifled by circumstances beyond one's control. Then, there's the political aspect to consider. Economic inequality breeds discontent, and discontent can lead to social unrest. People are starting to demand change, and rightly so. Movements advocating for fair wages and better working conditions are gaining momentum. It's a powerful reminder that when people come together, they can challenge the status quo and fight for justice. I admire the tenacity of those who refuse to accept the current state of affairs. Ultimately, addressing socio-economic inequality requires a collective effort. It's about creating systems that uplift everyone, not just a select few. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and working toward a society where everyone has a fair shot at success. The journey ahead won't be easy, but I believe it's a journey worth taking for the sake of justice and equality. Advances in technology and automation technology is advancing at a dizzying pace, and honestly, it's both exciting and a little terrifying. Take artificial intelligence, for example. It's transforming industries, changing the way we work, and even influencing our daily lives. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie, where machines are taking over tasks that were once the domain of humans. While it's incredible to see these advancements, it raises questions about the future of work and what it means for us as individuals. I've seen firsthand how automation can streamline processes and improve efficiency. Businesses are leveraging technology to cut costs and increase productivity, but at what cost? The reality is that many jobs are becoming obsolete, and that's a bitter pill to swallow for those who have dedicated their lives to their professions. It's disheartening to think about the uncertainty that many workers face as they navigate this rapidly changing landscape. And let's not forget about the skills gap. As technology evolves, so do the skills needed to thrive in the job market. I often wonder how we're preparing the next generation for this new reality. Are we equipping them with the necessary tools to succeed, or are we leaving them to figure it out on their own? It feels like a crucial conversation that we need to have as a society, especially as we witness the rise of remote work and gig economies. Technology also plays a significant role in our daily lives. It's become an integral part of how we communicate, learn, and even relax. While it offers convenience, I can't help but feel a sense of disconnect at times. Social media has made it easier to connect with others, yet it can also create a sense of isolation. The constant barrage of information can be overwhelming, and it's essential to find a balance that allows us to stay engaged without losing touch with reality. As we embrace these technological advancements, it's crucial to consider the ethical implications. How do we ensure that technology serves humanity rather than the other way around? It's a complex question, and the answers won't come easily. But I believe that with thoughtful dialogue and collaboration, we can navigate this new frontier and create a future where technology enhances our lives rather than diminishes them. Social movements and activism. There's something incredibly powerful about people coming together for a common cause. Social movements have played a pivotal role in shaping our societies, and I've witnessed firsthand the impact they can have. Whether it's a march for climate justice or a rally for racial equality, the energy in the air is palpable. It's a reminder that change is possible when individuals unite and raise their voices. I often think about the courage it takes for people to stand up and demand justice. Activism isn't just about protesting, it's about challenging the status quo and pushing for systemic change. It's inspiring to see how grassroots movements can spark conversations that lead to meaningful policy changes. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the belief that we can create a better world together. Social media has become a double-edged sword in this realm. On one hand, It allows activists to mobilize quickly and reach a global audience. I've seen campaigns go viral overnight, bringing attention to issues that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. On the other hand, it can also lead to misinformation and a diluted message. It's a balancing act that activists must navigate carefully to ensure their voices are heard without being overshadowed by noise. The intersectionality of social movements is another aspect that resonates with me. Issues of race, gender, and class are often intertwined, and it's essential to recognize how they intersect in the fight for justice. I've learned that solidarity among different movements can amplify efforts and create a more inclusive approach to activism. It's a reminder that we're all in this together and our struggles are interconnected. Ultimately, social movements remind us that change is not only possible but necessary. They challenge us to reflect on our values and push for a more equitable society. There's a sense of hope in knowing that individuals can come together and make a difference, even in the face of adversity. It's a journey worth embarking on, and I'm grateful to witness the passion and determination of those who refuse to be silent. Public health crises. Reflecting on the pandemic, it's surreal to think about how drastically life changed in such a short time. The COVID-19 crisis turned our world upside down, and I remember the uncertainty and fear that permeated our daily lives. It was a collective experience that highlighted the fragility of our health systems and the interconnectedness of our global community. Suddenly, we were all focused on the same enemy, an invisible virus that forced us to rethink how we live and interact. The impact on public health systems was profound. Hospitals were overwhelmed, and healthcare workers became the unsung heroes of this crisis. I can still picture the exhaustion on their faces as they fought tirelessly to save lives. It was a stark reminder of the importance of investing in healthcare infrastructure and ensuring that we're prepared for future challenges. The pandemic exposed vulnerabilities that had long been ignored, and it's a lesson we must take to heart. Economically, the ramifications were equally severe. Businesses closed, jobs were lost, and the global economy took a hit. I remember the anxiety of watching friends and family struggle to make disinformation and fake news. It's almost mind-boggling how much disinformation spreads through social media these days. I remember a time when I could trust the news I read. Now, it feels like every scroll on my feed leads me to dubious claims and twisted narratives. It's like we're trapped in a digital labyrinth of half-truths and outright lies. I recently stumbled upon a viral post that claimed a well-known public figure had endorsed a conspiracy theory. Within hours, it was everywhere, shared, liked, and commented on by thousands, many of whom didn't bother to fact-check. This is the new reality. Misinformation travels faster than the truth, often leaving a trail of confusion in its wake. The consequences of this phenomenon are staggering. I've seen friends and family argue passionately over topics based on falsehoods, creating rifts that seem almost impossible to mend. It's not just about a few misguided opinions. It's about shaping perceptions and ultimately influencing decisions. Take, for example, the impact of fake news during elections. We can't ignore how fabricated stories can sway public opinion, leading people to vote against their own interests. It's disheartening to think that a simple lie can have such a profound effect on our democracy. One of the most troubling aspects is the role algorithms play in this mess. I've spent hours diving down the rabbit hole of social media, and I can't help but notice how the content that pops up often aligns with my interests, no matter how skewed they may be. Algorithms prioritize engagement over truth. That means sensationalism reigns supreme, and genuine discourse often takes a back seat. It's like we're stuck in an echo chamber, where our beliefs are constantly reinforced rather than challenged. Sometimes I wonder, where do we draw the line between healthy debate and dangerous misinformation? It's not just individuals who are affected. Institutions are struggling to maintain their credibility in the face of rampant disinformation. I've seen reputable organizations scramble to debunk false claims while combating the tidal wave of misinformation that overshadows their efforts. It's a losing battle most days, filled with frustration and despair. The irony is palpable. The very tools designed to connect us are now the weapons used to divide us. I can't help but feel that we've entered a new era where media literacy is more crucial than ever. We need to be vigilant, not just for ourselves, but for the collective well-being of our society. In this climate, it feels like we all must become detectives of sorts, scrutinizing every headline and questioning every source. It's exhausting but necessary. I've started taking extra time to research claims before sharing anything online. It's a small step, but if each of us takes responsibility for what we consume and disseminate, maybe we can begin to reclaim some semblance of truth in our increasingly chaotic digital landscape. Demographic changes. Have you noticed how the world's population is shifting right before our eyes? I mean, it's not just about numbers, it's about the implications of an aging population and the mass migrations occurring due to conflict and climate change. Personally, I find it fascinating and a bit concerning. In many developed countries, we're seeing a significant increase in the elderly population. This demographic shift has implications for everything from healthcare to the workforce. I often think about how we'll care for an aging society when the ratio of working-age individuals to retirees becomes increasingly lopsided. On the flip side, we have the younger generations in developing nations, many of whom are on the move. I've read stories about families uprooting themselves from war-torn areas or regions devastated by climate disasters, seeking better opportunities elsewhere. It's like watching a real-life game of chess where people are constantly repositioning themselves in the search for safety and stability. This migration can lead to vibrant, multicultural societies, but it also poses challenges. Integration, social cohesion, and resource allocation become hot-button issues that we can't afford to ignore. I often reflect on how these demographic changes will affect our communities. In my neighborhood, for instance, I've seen an influx of families from different backgrounds, bringing their cultures, languages, and traditions. It enriches our environment, but it can also lead to tension and misunderstandings. We're facing a unique moment in history where diversity is both a strength and a challenge. It's a balancing act, and I sometimes wonder how we'll navigate these complexities as a society. Then, there's the question of what it means for our economies. An aging workforce can lead to labor shortages, while a surge in younger individuals can create opportunities for innovation. But that's only if we're willing to adapt to these changes. I've been reading about how some countries are implementing policies to attract skilled immigrants to fill gaps in their labor markets. It's a proactive approach, but it requires a willingness to embrace change, something that doesn't always come easy. Ultimately, I believe that these demographic shifts present both challenges and opportunities. It's up to us to engage in conversations about how we can collectively address these changes in a way that fosters understanding and inclusivity. The world is becoming more interconnected, and our responses need to reflect that reality. The question is, how do we ensure that everyone benefits from this transformation? Geopolitics and regional conflicts. When I think about the current state of geopolitics, it sometimes feels like a game of chess, but with much higher stakes. Tensions between nations seem to simmer just beneath the surface, ready to boil over at any moment. I've been following various conflicts around the world, and it's astonishing how interconnected everything has become. A civil war in one country can lead to a refugee crisis in neighboring nations, affecting economies and social dynamics far beyond the initial conflict zone. One thing I find particularly alarming is how geopolitical tensions often overshadow the human element. I read stories about families torn apart by war and governments prioritizing power struggles over the well-being of their citizens. It's a harsh reality that can feel overwhelming at times. I remember reading about the Syrian conflict and how millions have been displaced, leading to significant challenges for countries trying to provide aid and support. It's heartbreaking to see how the quest for power can devastate lives and communities. Then there's the role of superpowers in this landscape. It's fascinating and frightening to see how countries like the US, China, and Russia wield their influence on the global stage. I often wonder how decisions made in boardrooms or legislative chambers can send ripples through entire regions. The recent tensions in Eastern Europe serve as a stark reminder of how fragile peace can be and how quickly it can unravel. The consequences of these geopolitical maneuvers aren't just abstract concepts. They directly impact people's lives. I also think about the growing importance of global cooperation in addressing these issues. Climate change, for example, knows no borders, and it's increasingly clear that we must work together to combat its effects. I've been encouraged by initiatives where nations come together to address shared challenges, but it feels like we're often pulled apart by conflicting interests and agendas. It's a delicate dance, and I can't help but feel that the stakes are higher than ever. In the midst of all this chaos, I believe it's essential to stay informed and engaged. Understanding the complexities of geopolitics can help us make sense of the world around us. It's easy to feel powerless in the face of such enormous challenges, but I truly believe that our awareness can lead to informed discussions and, ultimately, meaningful change. We need to advocate for peace and diplomacy, pushing back against the narratives that divide us. Human rights and civil liberties. When I think about human rights and civil liberties, I can't help but feel a mix of hope and frustration. On one hand, we've made significant strides over the years, with movements advocating for the rights of marginalized communities gaining traction. Yet, on the other hand, we're witnessing a disturbing trend of backsliding in many parts of the world. It's a stark reminder that the fight for justice is far from over. I often find myself reflecting on the stories of individuals who have risked everything to stand up for their rights, and it's both inspiring and heartbreaking. In countries where authoritarian regimes reign, the suppression of dissent is alarming. I remember reading about activists who were imprisoned for speaking out against their government. It's a chilling thought to live in a place where expressing one's opinion can lead to severe consequences. I often wonder what it would take for the international community to take a stand against these injustices. The reality is that human rights are universal, but they are often treated as optional depending on the political landscape. The role of technology in this fight cannot be understated. Social media has become a powerful tool for activists to disseminate information and organize movements. I've seen firsthand how hashtags can mobilize people across the globe, drawing attention to issues that might otherwise be ignored. However, it's a double-edged sword. Governments are increasingly using technology to surveil and suppress dissent, making it harder for individuals to advocate for their rights. It's a constant cat-and-mouse game, and I find myself wondering how we can harness the power of technology for good while mitigating its darker implications. Education plays a crucial role in promoting human rights as well. I believe that raising awareness about these issues is essential to fostering empathy and understanding. It's not enough to read about injustices from a distance. We need to engage in conversations that challenge our perspectives. I often make it a point to seek out literature and media that highlight the experiences of those whose rights have been violated. It's a small step, but it helps me understand the complexities of these issues. Ultimately, the struggle for human rights is a collective effort. It requires us to stand in solidarity with those who are marginalized and oppressed. I've learned that change doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process filled with setbacks and victories. But if we remain vigilant, informed, and committed to the cause, I believe we can. Transformations in work. You know, with the rapid changes happening around us, the concept of work is evolving in ways we never imagined. I remember when the idea of working from home was almost a novelty. Now, it's become the norm for many. The pandemic pushed us into this remote work environment, and it's fascinating to see how people have adapted. I mean, who would have thought that Zoom meetings would replace the good old conference room? There's a certain freedom that comes with not having to commute, but there's also a challenge in separating work and personal life. As I navigate this new landscape, I can't help but notice the rise of the gig economy. Freelancing and short-term contracts are taking over traditional employment for many. I've dabbled in it myself, picking up gigs here and there. There's a thrill in being your own boss. But it also comes with uncertainty. No more steady paycheck. Instead, you're chasing down jobs hoping they come through. And then, there's the question of benefits. Healthcare, retirement plans, things we often took for granted in regular jobs. It's a mixed bag, to say the least. Collaboration tools have become essential in this new world of work. I find myself relying on platforms like Slack and Trello to keep track of projects and communicate with teams spread across the globe. It's incredible how technology has bridged distances, yet I sometimes miss the casual water cooler chats that foster creativity. There's something about face-to-face interaction that can't be replicated through a screen. But, hey, adaptability is key, right? The future of work also raises questions about job security. With automation and AI on the rise, I often wonder how safe my own job really is. Many traditional roles are being replaced by machines that can work faster and more efficiently. It's a double-edged sword. While it boosts productivity, it also creates anxiety about the job market. I've heard people say that we need to upskill or reskill to remain relevant, but that's easier said than done. Lastly, there's the element of work-life balance that we all crave. As remote work blurs the lines between home and office, it's crucial to establish boundaries. I've learned to set specific work hours and stick to them. It's a work in progress, but I believe that finding that balance is essential for our well-being. The future of work is undoubtedly changing, and I'm curious to see where it leads us. Sustainability and the green economy. Sustainability is becoming more than just a buzzword. It's a necessity. I've been reading up on how businesses are shifting towards sustainable practices, and it's inspiring. Companies are realizing that it's not just about profit anymore, it's about the planet. I've seen brands make significant changes, from reducing plastic usage to sourcing materials ethically. It's refreshing to witness this shift in mindset, and I can't help but cheer for those making a difference. The transition to a low-carbon economy is also gaining momentum. It's fascinating to think about how renewable energy sources are becoming mainstream. I remember when solar panels were considered a luxury. Now they're popping up on rooftops everywhere. Wind turbines are becoming a common sight too. I've even considered installing solar panels myself. It's an investment, but thinking about the long-term benefits for both my wallet and the environment makes it worth it. What really strikes me is the emphasis on local and sustainable food sources. There's a growing trend towards farm-to-table dining, and I've tried to support local farmers whenever I can. The idea of knowing where my food comes from and how it's produced resonates deeply with me. Plus, the taste of fresh, locally sourced produce is unbeatable. It's like I'm contributing to a larger movement, and that feels good. But of course, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The challenge of changing established industries is immense. Many companies are resistant to change, clinging to old practices that are harmful to the environment. It's frustrating to see how slow some sectors are to adapt. I think it's going to take a concerted effort from consumers, activists, and policymakers to drive the change we need. The power of collective action cannot be underestimated. Lastly, I often reflect on the importance of education in promoting sustainability. It's not just about teaching people to recycle. It's about instilling a sense of responsibility towards our planet. I've come across initiatives that incorporate sustainability into school curricula, and I believe this is crucial. The younger generation needs to understand the impact of their choices. If we can raise aware and engaged citizens, I have hope for a sustainable future. The water crisis and natural resources. Water scarcity is something that has been on my mind lately. It's hard to believe that something so essential can be in such short supply. I've read reports about regions facing severe droughts, and it's alarming to see how this affects communities. People are literally fighting over water resources, and it's a stark reminder of how precious this commodity is. It makes me appreciate the clean water I have access to, and I often find myself thinking about what I can do to conserve it. As I delve deeper into the issue, I realize that the water crisis is intertwined with climate change. Rising temperatures lead to increased evaporation and altered precipitation patterns, exacerbating the scarcity. It's a vicious cycle that impacts agriculture, drinking water supplies, and overall ecosystem health. I've started to pay more attention to my water usage, from turning off the tap while brushing my teeth to using water-efficient appliances. Every little bit helps, right? Moreover, the fight for natural resources isn't just about water. It extends to other vital resources like land and minerals. I've seen documentaries highlighting the struggles of indigenous communities defending their land from exploitation. It's heartbreaking to witness the destruction of ecosystems for profit, and it makes me want to support sustainable practices even more. I think we often take for granted the abundance we have without considering the consequences of overconsumption. The role of technology in addressing the water crisis is also intriguing. Innovations like desalination plants and water recycling systems are emerging as potential solutions. I've read about communities implementing rainwater harvesting systems, which seems like a practical approach. It's exciting to think about how we can utilize technology to tackle these pressing challenges, but I also worry about the environmental costs associated with some of these solutions. Ultimately, the water crisis is a wake-up call for all of us. It reminds me of the interconnectedness of our actions and their impact on the planet. I believe we need to advocate for policies that prioritize sustainable water management and ensure access for all. The fight for our planet's resources is ongoing, and I want to be part of the solution, however small my contribution may seem. Evolution of education is undergoing a significant transformation, and it's fascinating to witness. The traditional classroom setup is evolving, with more emphasis on online learning. I've heard stories from friends who've embraced remote education, and it's amazing how technology has made learning accessible to so many. I can't help but admire the flexibility it offers, allowing individuals to learn at their own pace. It's a game changer for those who may have struggled in a conventional classroom environment. However, this shift also comes with challenges. As much as I appreciate the convenience of online learning, I can't ignore the digital divide that persists. Not everyone has equal access to technology or the internet, which raises concerns about equity in education. I think it's crucial for us to advocate for initiatives that bridge this gap, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to benefit from these advancements. Another aspect I find intriguing is the shift in teaching methodologies. Educators are exploring new pedagogical approaches, focusing on critical thinking and problem-solving rather than rote memorization. I've seen examples of project-based learning that engage students in real-world issues, and it's refreshing to see this emphasis on practical application. It makes me reflect on my own educational experiences and how they could have been enriched by such approaches. Moreover, the rise of lifelong learning is becoming increasingly important. In a world where skills become outdated rapidly, the idea of continuous education resonates with me. I've considered taking online courses to expand my skill set, whether for personal growth or career advancement. The notion that learning doesn't stop after formal education is liberating. It encourages us to be curious and embrace new challenges throughout our lives. Lastly, I believe that education should also focus on social and emotional learning. The world can be overwhelming at times, and equipping students with the tools to navigate their emotions and relationships is essential. I've come across programs that prioritize mental health and well-being in schools, and I think this is a vital step in creating a more compassionate society. Education isn't just about academics, it's about nurturing well-rounded individuals who can contribute positively to their communities. Culture and global identity. The intersection of globalization and cultural identity is a topic that fascinates me. In our increasingly interconnected world, it's interesting to see how cultures influence one another. I've traveled to various countries and experienced this blend of traditions firsthand. On one hand, I love that I can enjoy cuisine from around the world or listen to music that transcends borders. It's a beautiful reminder of our shared humanity. However, there's also a concern about cultural homogenization. I've seen how local traditions can be overshadowed by dominant cultures, leading to a loss of unique identities. It makes me think about the importance of preserving cultural heritage. I often wonder how we can celebrate diversity while also fostering a sense of global unity. It's a delicate balance that requires thoughtful consideration. Social media plays a significant role in this interplay of cultures. I've noticed how platforms like Instagram can amplify cultural expressions, allowing artists and creators to share their work with a global audience. It's exciting to see how people can connect over shared interests and experiences, yet it also raises questions about authenticity. I sometimes wonder if the portrayal of cultures online. As we stand at the precipice of these last 7 years, the world around us is shifting in ways that many of us could never imagined possible. Have you noticed the signs? The whispers of prophecy echoing through the chaos. It's like a divine clock ticking down to an inevitable conclusion. Imagine a world where everything you believed is challenged, where the very fabric of society is tested. What will you do when the unthinkable happens? Will you stand firm in your faith, or will fear grip your heart? Every headline we read, every shift in nature, speaks to the urgency of our times. Are these mere coincidences, or are they the markers of a greater plan unfolding? As we dive deeper into these prophetic waters, ask yourself, how prepared are you for what's coming next? I think the sand titan ring a bit deeper.